Adam Kolker, you were a colleague of Brother Yusef at the University of Massachusetts. Could you say something about what were the your impressions of Yusef as a teacher, and what kind of feedback did Yusef have among the faculty?
Wow. Yeah, Yusef and I actually just kind of crossed paths for a year at UMass. Again, as I said before, he was retiring from his position there when I was starting. And, you know, as with everything about him, for me, who was more of a fan of his than anything else, there was just something about his presence that was so welcoming and deep and grounded. And as an educator, I just always felt that provided such an important element of balance in academia, which is often lacking. You know, someone who, his greatness as a musician is self-evident. We don't have to talk about that and everything that he had to teach, but just his I'm sure he didn't think of it as leadership, but his presence and his example of, everything that Adam Rudolph just mentioned in terms of his searching and as a musician and his constant scholarship and that was evident, but just by being around him, and he was always so complimentary to everybody, and he was certainly incredibly respected on the faculty as far as I could tell, and it was just having him around just provided such a great anchor, I'm sure for his students as well. Somebody that, just by being around him, as is often the case with so many teachers, you learn so much just by absorbing his energy. And that was the thing, in my brief time with him as a fellow faculty member, that's the one thing that was so evident to me, and I could see it in his students too, how they, spoke so reverently about him.
Okay, well, let's talk to a couple of his students. Mark, you studied with Yusef, right? What were your impressions of Yusef as a teacher?
Wow, I don't know if I could sum that up in a short time.
Really?
I'll just say at UMass, he had his studio was sort of a practice room in the corner of the hallway, sort of away from everybody else. I don't know if he requested that or that's where they wanted him. But you could just see when people would come out of the room, their minds would be completely blown. Like they'd have this expression on their face like, okay, they don't know what hit them. So it was like that. And you could just see, if you just stood like outside the room, you could just see one after the other coming out. As far as what I remember were a couple of things. I used to do his class over at Hampshire College on Wednesday morning. I play bass for him. And there was a lot of, guitar players who hadn't been exposed that much to jazz, or so-called jazz, because I don't think he would want me calling it that. But we would basically like sit in a big circle, and he'd bring in a tune to play, usually something he wrote, and we would play it, and he would just go around, and everybody would take a couple of choruses or however long they felt like playing, and we'd go all the way around the room, and then we'd go on to the next tune. And I mean, if somebody did, I remember one time, one student just decided he was feeling a certain spirit, just stood up and started singing out of nowhere. And I thought it was odd, but at the end, Brother Yusef praised him and was very, very giving about saying how wonderful it was to see that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oran, you're another Yusef Lateef student. What do you think you got from Yusef that you carry on into your music today?
Oof, that's a big question. I'd say, well, like Adam was saying, the main thing that really sticks with me every moment is his presence, and the way he carried himself, and the way he had respect for everyone, and was listening at every moment. No matter who he was talking to, he was always there, and so grounded. And there's few people I've met in my life who are really so grounded and so calm in a way, and that ability to listen and to just be there is really something that musically I feel like he taught me too. So I guess my relationship started with him in 1999 when I went to a summer program that he was teaching, and for 2 weeks we were like, he taught like a 3 or 4 hour long workshop in the morning, then we'd break for lunch, and then he would have this ensemble that he coached for 1 week, and then after that it was Dr. Billy Taylor who coached it for 1 week. And so just being around him so much, and then kind of after that always following up with him and stuff, really that I guess the one thing that carries through is respect for other people, for other cultures, and for also the uniqueness of each culture that he was studying and that he was focusing on. I think Adam Rudolph was talking about how he was on the one hand he was exploring modern classical concepts, on the other hand he was exploring a lot about West Africa and other parts of the world. And when he talked to me about each one, it seemed like he really was trying to get at the essence of that one specific culture. And even when he talked about Nigerian music, it wasn't like Nigerian music, it was this one people over here, they have this dance because they're farmers. This one people over here, they have this other dance which relates to their music. And he's really, or if he was talking about using, he talked about using 9-tone rows instead of like a 12-tone row, getting into it by using 9-tone rows. And it was like really respectful of where this music is coming from, before then, just taking generalizations about music. And then also always focusing on being yourself. And I remember one time he told me, if you try to sound like Coltrane, there's always going to be somebody who's going to come around and sound more like Coltrane than you. If you try to sound like yourself, there's nobody who's going to show up and sound more like yourself than you. So I remember that was always important to him, is sounding like yourself.